Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name's Catherine Jordan, and welcome to the next episode in our series talking on community resilience in changing times. And today's conversation is on mental well-being. And big love and big welcome to our speakers this evening. We've got CHUKUMEKA MAXWELL, or preferably known as Chukes, and Jim Morgan joining us on the conversation this evening. Thanks, gentlemen. Very nice to have you with us. So I'm going to invite you both to introduce yourself a little bit more in a minute. But before I do that, I'm just going to read a quick something to introduce the theme of this week, and then we can get going on the conversation. So, mental well-being. If you're someone who has been struggling with your mental health in some way during the pandemic, you can be assured in knowing you're not alone. There are varying statistics in the degree to which mental health has risen within the UK alone this year. For many people, their go-to resources have been either removed or significantly challenged. And this has been very hard for so many. While this is the case, for those of us working in the profession of mental health support, we're also seeing new opportunities opening at this time. So these are some of the questions that we'll be speaking to this evening. What are the opportunities that are open to us within this time? What might we be invited to explore as an alternative during lockdown? And how can we adapt to find mental resilience? What causes mental ill health can root in many different factors. This evening, we'll be speaking to two of these factors, which are more in our control. One of the factors I believe that causes mental ill health is our disconnection from the natural world. The other is the long-term effects of societal trauma and functioning at a pace that is unnatural to our mind-body system. While our connection with other human beings is limited for so many, what might be more open to us right now is the opportunity to come into more relationship with the natural world. An opportunity to slow down our internal pace, which can begin to soothe and regulate the experience of societal trauma. Can we take time to embrace this slowing down? Can we actively walk at a slower pace? Actively slow our breathing as we do this? Can we take time to really look around and listen to the sounds as we walk and be active in letting our body and our minds rest into a slower rhythm? Can we go to a nearby tree and rest our bellies on it and breathe with it for a minute? Something I see being open to us right now is the opportunity of embracing this slowing down, to find mental and physical regulation, and to rekindle this relationship with the natural world. While this may not be accessible to everyone, if it is accessible to you, can you take the opportunity to engage with these qualities and to embrace what this time affords us? Creating and being part of support networks is also vitally important. Whether that's through social media groups, local friends, or connecting with our family members. In any way we can, let's keep those connections going. Whilst virtual connections are not the same as physical ones, and we acknowledge that, they do still have an impact on our well-being. It's important to keep talking, to keep connecting in all the ways we can. We will get through this together. So there's a little introduction about where we're coming from this evening in opening this dialogue on mental well-being. David, if you're there, I'd like to invite you just to pop in now and just say a little bit about your role with us this evening and what David's going to be keeping an eye on for us.
Okay.
Hi, David.
Hi. So I'm Catherine's technical assistant, and my job is to link up the event as it comes up on Facebook Live with the event as it's happening on Zoom. So it's great that you're listening, it's great that you're watching, and that's very much a dynamic way of participating. But we have another idea for participation, which is for you to ask questions, make comments, express appreciation, whatever it may be. And the questions may be of a general nature, or you may just want to ask for support with mental health issues that you're struggling with at the moment, or mental health issues that someone you care about is struggling with. Now, there are two ways of doing that. You can either do so publicly through the chat box, or if you wish to remain anonymous, you can just hit send message, and that way we will recognize it as an anonymous message. And either way, we'll be very glad. I and Catherine will be very glad to read out your questions, comments, appreciations, whatever they may be, because this is our event that includes you. Thank you.
Thanks, David. So yeah, just to clarify, if you would like to pose a question to us anonymously, given the sensitivity of this topic tonight, if you go to the page, at the top of the page, it says send message. If you send a message there, then we'll treat that as an anonymous question. So we won't read your name with the question. So we'll just pose the question without mentioning your name, so it can be held anonymously. And there's a live thread that goes alongside the video on the page, if you're watching it there on the Facebook page. So if you post there, we'll see your name and we'll assume that you're happy for us to mention your name. So thanks, David. Thanks for keeping an eye on that. And hopefully we'll pop back in at some point with some questions and comments from our live audience. So now, just to get to our lovely speakers who are joining us this evening. So just to introduce, first of all, we have Chukes, so CHUKUMEKA Maxwell, but prefers to be called Chukes. Is that right, Chukes? You're currently muted, but hopefully you'll speak to us in a sec.
I will speak to you, yes. Hello.
Okay,
yes.
Hi, Chukes. Welcome. So Chukes is a founder of Action to Prevent Suicide. So he runs a CIC company for Action to Prevent Suicide, a Devon-based non-profit dedicated to raising funds for community-based programs focused on suicide prevention.
Yeah.
Welcome, Chukes. Really happy to have you on this call
Thank
with
you.
what you're doing. So thank you.
Okay.
Great. And then we have Jim. Hi, Jim.
Hiya.
Hi. Welcome.
Oh, thank you.
So Jim is an eco and nature therapist, outdoor life coach, forest therapy guide, and facilitator of nature and wellbeing programs, including transformative wilderness journeys and nature quests. Sounds exciting. Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you.
Great. So nice to have you both with us this evening. It's an important topic that we're speaking on. As I spoke to you both individually, we all kind of feel quite passionate about this topic this evening. All three of us here are mental health professionals. So I also work as a mindfulness-based psychotherapist, and I do therapeutic support teenagers. Our teenagers are really struggling at the moment, so as many people are. So all of us feel quite passionate about this topic of how we can be mentally resourceful in this time. So I wanted to just pose some questions to you both individually about your work to begin with, and just find out a bit more about what you're doing, and just if you'd like to. Well, actually, let's just invite you just to introduce yourself a little bit more first. So yeah, Jim, if you want to start as you're sort of ready with your mic off, could you just tell us a little bit about your work and what you're up to at the moment, and what you're supporting people with?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's great to be here. I'm very grateful to be in this conversation and with this gathering. Yeah, the work that I've been doing over the last number of years is really very much nature-based therapy, forest bathing, forest therapy, taking groups into nature for their better well-being and for a deeper connection to nature. And I've worked and sort of studied in the ecotherapy area. And I mean, what I'm passionate about is bringing people together as a group, as a circle out in nature, a place to connect themselves, to really feel what's going on inside them, to share that with the group, and to really just open up to nature and to build a new relationship with nature, as nature. And that's come about from my own journey. through ill health and mental health over a number of years, and the restorative, you know, the healing aspect of nature that I experienced and still do today throughout the whole pandemic and the lockdowns. It's incredibly healing, which I know everybody's experienced. So that's my passion. It's something that I feel I've been on a full circle, full journey, and I'm here, very honoured to be here just to share a little bit of that.
Thank you. That's great. Lovely. Thank you, Jim. And Chukes, would you like to say a bit about your background and why you're speaking on this topic today?
So I'm 60 years young, so I think part of my journey is sort of just looking back at life and some of the struggles, and also looking forward to the future to sort of see that actually when I was growing up, the world was in a pretty shit state, excuse my French, and I was really struggling to even feel a sense of hope or sense of wellness. And as I've done many different things, I've been in the catering business, I've been an assistant paramedic, I've been a Quaker prison chaplain, I've been a social worker, I'm a mental health worker, I've worked in mental health across cultures. So, and I've been a Christian Buddhist monk. And so one of the things that I've found in my life is just because I didn't get diagnosed till I was 43 with dyslexia and dyspraxia, I found that I had to experience things rather than just pass exams. I come from quite an academic family in the sense that my father was a high court judge and many of my friends were lawyers and everything else. But I always struggled. I was called Teflon at school for dropping the rugby ball, which is now my dyspraxia, so I understand. And dyslexia, I would just know things, but I didn't know how I knew things. So as I've studied in my journey, I understand now about reincarnation, and I understand about many things which were not necessarily culturally appropriate. So what I've found in my life journey is like there are some universal themes and there are also some very diverse themes. And having lived in Jamaica, Belize, Nigeria, and also boarding school in Sussex, it was just these different cultures were really freaking my head out, to be quite honest. And as I've got older, I've realized that for me, the root of some of my greatest suffering is about competition and scarcity. And within that, I've chosen to work with suicide prevention because for me, that's the end of the road. If someone feels so alone with 7 billion people on the planet and wants to take their life by suicide, that for me is not a good idea. So then going upstream, the total antidote towards it is well-being. And I don't think we really know what well-being is because, you know, a lot of our issues are emotional and also cultural. And so I feel like now, 2021, can't believe that we're on our way to real well-being and, you know, collective awakening through the Christ principle or Buddha consciousness or whatever you want to call it, but that being overshadowing our lives.
Great. Thank you. What wonderful introduction. That's great. Okay, so Chukes, should we stay with you then for a minute? So I was thinking about both of you from our conversations, and just thinking what really inspired me to sort of begin this dialogue. You've already kind of partly answered my question, but yeah, I guess I was really interested when I saw your profile that you do suicide prevention work, and I think so many people now have been touched by suicide in some way. I know I have, and I think it's a really important thing. Like you're saying, it's the kind of the end of the road territory, and I think to make an intervention at that point is so important. So I was really happy to see that there's someone out there doing that work. What really is it that you're doing within that work? What happens? So if there is someone we know who is, you know, either feeling like that, or, you know, a friend or ourselves that's feeling like that, where do they go? What do they do? And what do you offer?
So it's not, I mean, it looks as though I'm running something, but actually it feels more like giving people a space and an opportunity to connect, because I'm going to throw out some statistics here, but I'm also mindful when we throw out statistics that behind it are real people, but also I want to put a sense of hope and I want to put a sense of balance to this. Yeah. So around the world, 1 million people die by suicide. And I'm going to say at one level, only 1 million people. And I don't mean to say it like that, but 2 million people have just died in a virus. Yeah. 17 million people die from heart attacks. But there is something about suicide which really hits. It's almost like the arrowhead of a death. because the statistics say for everyone who takes their life by suicide, roughly 133 people are affected. And so that's just in people who no one else may know, let alone those who are famous. So there's something really raw about loss towards the death of someone by suicide that really affects people's psyche. Most people who want to have attempted to take their lives and come back to tell the story, or other people who've got through it, have always sort of said they never really wanted to die, they just wanted the pain to stop. So if you'd asked me before COVID and before anything, in my hubris, I was like, I can do this, I can set this big business up, I can rescue the world, I can save the world. It's not like that. I never know. In my life, if I look back on my life, I've helped lots of people not take their life, but I didn't know I was doing that. I was just being friendly, I was just being hopeful, I was just being optimistic. So for me, it's really important at this time, more than any other time, not to be overwhelmed by the psychic energy of negativity. In the introduction, I talked about the past. That was a time when I felt very suicidal. Yeah, because there was no hope. There was the Berlin Wall. There was South Africa, the apartheid. There was nuclear war. You know, when my mother arrived in this country, she couldn't even see her hand in front of her face because of the smog. This was not a wholly happy place. I was a black person in the 60s and 70s. I don't even want to go there. That's a whole other Black Lives Story edition, which we'll do another time. So there's been a lot. So for me, realizing through my meeting of the Buddha of this age and Jesus and many other things that I've done along my life, and feeling really protected. And I know I'm going to use the word God because for me it's important. My name means thank God. And in the cultures I come from, that's very important. It's not a white guy sitting on heaven with a beard. It's a living being, as Bob Marley would sing. You know, people think that great God is going to come from the sky and make everybody high, but it's not that. It's a reality. So understanding that, I'm starting to understand about reincarnation, and we're always here. So for me, if I can, with love in my heart, help anybody not take their life, that's it. So what's also really important about this is that 2/3 of people that take their life aren't known to any medical service. So that means things like we're doing now are really important. We talk about, oh, we know that person, we know that person. That's just the real small amount. So this is a real community initiative that's needed. This is our ability to respond, responsibility to anybody. So what is our action? Love is an action. So again, we've also set up a charity called Goodwill in Action. And for me, that means for me personally, I have to purify myself. The people that I work with, I don't employ anybody, but I work with, and this is part of what we're doing now, are people, we've all been through our struggles, and all we're trying to do now is take what we've learned from our pain and suffering and give back. So when I sit with a person that's feeling suicidal, when our organization does training, we know that so many people have been touched by suicide. And the ability to listen whilst that person is suffering and trust in our hearts that that person has something in them that is a life force that wants to make them live is all I can do. Now, this doesn't mean that I'm not going to meet someone or lose people to suicide. I've picked up body parts of people who jumped in front of trains. I've had 2 lady friends of mine who just died by suicide. No one would know. So my plea from One Thing Tonight is to trust that we never know what's going on in somebody's head, but where possible, connect without judgment, deep listening, and a loving heart. That's what our organization does.
That's lovely, Chukes. Thank you. What a lovely point to finish on. And something I was really struck by in what you said there is that 2/3 of the people that take their lives from suicide are not known to mental health services. Yeah, that's been my experience in people I've known, that it's just not been known that they were even struggling in that way. And I think that's something I've definitely seen in my life and my work, is that actually people that do tend to either make an attempt or do take their lives, they don't speak about it. They're people that don't reach out. And so it's really important to reach out and to encourage people to reach out and speak. And I actually listened to a talk done on the Red Table. I don't know if you've heard of the Red Table. It's done by Will Smith's wife. I can't remember her name. She's gone from my mind. Anyway, she did a talk with some young teenagers on suicide. And there was a young woman who had tried to shoot herself, and she actually sort of missed slightly and went through the back of her neck, and thankfully didn't succeed. But she's, you know, she had this life that she was a cheerleader. She was seen to be, you know, having a really good life, and she never once dared to speak what she was really experiencing, and to the point where she did that. And her message to people, she's now doing suicide prevention work, and her message to people is now tell someone what you're feeling, because the minute you get it out, it changes. It's so intense when you're living in your own personal hell like that. But the minute you talk to someone and you tell someone, you realize it's nowhere near as bad as you think it is.
Yeah, I just need to give another couple of statistics to that as well, that they say worldwide, at any one time, 1 in 20 people are walking around with a suicidal thought. Right. So when you work that in our country, you see the scale of the issue. And so the idea of the company, again, is to train people in all forms of community to have the ability to respond, like I said, responsibility. So we've got courses from seven tips to help people right the way through to a 2-day training course. But in collaboration now, through COVID, it's been incredible. We've managed to start to touch people around the world on this one as well. And then the other factor as well, last factor I'll finish up on here, is that, again, within that 2/3 figure, 2/3 more men than women take their lives. So then when we track back, one of the most important things, and both you and I work with young people, is like, how can we get young people to truly have a voice in a culture and a country that doesn't really like young people? And we've got to name that one. We've been youngsters. I have never heard a time in British society, our culture, where they've lauded how beautiful and wonderful the young people are. Without us doing that, we are just creating. So I'm really keen to work with people who can see beyond the issues, but inspire from a asset-based reality rather than a deficit reality. So when we say 1 in 4 people suffer from mental health difficulties, what's happened to the other 3? Yeah. When we say 1 in 20, what are the 19 doing? Can that 19 help that 1? And that's what I would like to work with.
Great. That's great. Thank you. Thanks, Chukes. Jada Pinkett Smith. Sorry, her name came back to me. So, thank you. Great. So, Jim, what was my question to you? I can't remember now. I think when I was when we were talking, I just really loved the sound of everything you were doing. And I particularly loved what you talked about with Walk With Me. It just sounded like you're really thinking like I am, you know, we're having to adapt what we're doing right now, right? We're having to okay, that's not working. There's something else that I can offer and can respond. It sounds like that was what you were doing like that. So I just wondered if you could tell us a bit about that. That'd be great.
Yeah, Walk With Me. I think I just picking up from what Hugo said, for me and my experience is really that deeper listening. How can we listen to ourselves deeply, first of all, and how can we listen to our communities, and particularly the young people, and how can the older and the elders, create spaces for the younger people to be heard. But collectively at the moment, all of us, and I think it's how are we dealing with sorrow, how are we dealing with grief, how as a society, as communities, as villages, as one whole, do we deal with our pain and our suffering? And I absolutely agree. It's bringing together circles in nature where we can share what is going on for us. Because I think we suffer. Certainly, I did as privately. We suffer alone, and because we don't know any other way. And the people perhaps you would turn to at that time, you feel some sort of shame attached to it. And so who do you talk to? And I think, Walk With Me came about for me because in the years that I struggled with my mental well-being and I had a breakdown, I really remember kind of not being there, not being able to talk, not being able to speak to anyone, not being able to even look at somebody in the eye, and just that feeling of I need help, but I don't know who to speak to, and I'm not even sure whether I could actually speak if I tried to. And so I think for me something that was really powerful, which was someone just inviting me to go for a walk with them, and there was no you know, I need you to talk. There was no sort of, you know, what's going on for you, because I didn't know. I didn't know. It was a number of things that I've obviously since found out. But at the time, I had no idea what was going on. So, you know, that invitation, I think, is really powerful and very compassionate and very vulnerable, to either invite someone that you know, that you just feel is maybe, or maybe don't know, is struggling or feeling low, or just, even if you don't have that feeling, sometimes just inviting them for a walk is a very powerful and impactful thing to do, which doesn't mean they have to talk to you or speak with you. It's just you're holding a space for them to be heard and to listen. And often the healing power of that is actually done by nature, and just by walking alongside them, you feel like you're being supported by someone, even if you don't say anything. I think it's very, very powerful, that, and very healing. And so for me, it was that journey of what can I do now? And I think there wasn't a lot we can do. Gathering in circles. I mean, in between 2 lockdowns, we had circles out in nature where we had, you know, ages from anywhere between 16, 17, right the way up to 70, 80, like, you know, through the ages and through all the wisdoms. And it was incredible what some of the young people were saying. It's incredibly moving. And in fact, everybody in that group, and you know, I really deeply resonate with sharing circles and talking circles going forward. I think it's one of the most important things we could be doing. And that's certainly been part of my healing process, having circles to just really be truthfully who you are and share what's going on for you. And layer by layer, you start to bring that out of you, what's truly, and some of it you don't even know is there. And it's by listening to other people and knowing that they're also on a journey themselves, where you start to connect, and it kind of gives you confidence to speak and to share. And so Walk With Me was really that offering to either invite someone for a walk with me, or if you feel that you can, ask someone, can I go for a walk with you? And for me, that was something that it was quite a simple response, a simple request, or an easier request to do, and one that I found very healing. Yeah, it's something that I really connect to, the healing power of walking alongside someone. And from then, it's kind of developed into my own, well, myself walking alone in nature. I never feel I'm alone. And, you know, I now connect, I feel more connected in nature, wandering sometimes on my own, because I have space and a deeper listening, and I can really tune into my senses and feel, wow, there's so many people here. There's so many of my family here with me. And yet I never felt that before. I would say I was an outdoor person, but I never felt that deep connection that, you know, with all of nature. And that's something come about from my journey, and something that, you know, I think it helps, because I live alone at the moment. And, you know, I do at times feel pretty isolated, but if I go out for a walk and really connect with all the birds and the animals and the footprints, and just feel, wow, actually there's so much around. There's so much wildlife around. And, you know, I think it's just stopping and noticing and becoming aware. And I think maybe we'll come on to that, is that slowing down and becoming more present. So yeah, so that's a little bit about the Walk With Me.
Thank you. Thanks, Jim. I think what really speaks to me in it is the simplicity of it, because I know when I've had times in my life where I've struggled with my mental health, like you described, you know, if someone wanted to kind of, if someone even said to me, what do you need right now? I couldn't have answered that question. You know, I couldn't have said what I didn't know what I needed. And I can see that for other people. And when I was looking through resources today to kind of go with this talk, and looking at some of the suggestions on like the NHS and Mind pages, it's like a lot of the things it suggests is, you know, I just think is out of reach for a lot of people that might be experiencing mental health difficulties. And if I'm honest, you know, like it's like, oh, we'll get up and, you know, go out for a walk and do something nice. And it's like, if you're feeling really depressed, or, you know, that's a big ask for some people, I think. But I love the simplicity of just someone, you know, just saying, you want to just come and have a walk with me? You know, no pressure to say anything, no pressure to name anything you're experiencing. Just I don't know, there's something about that feels really heart touching for me. So yeah, thanks for sharing your work. And you've got a Facebook page, I believe, that goes, is it a Facebook group or a Facebook page? Or
it's a Facebook group, A Walk With Me. It's only been up and running 3-4 months, but you know, we've got people from many countries already very involved, and people volunteering to just walk with a person in their local area if they don't know them, and I've had an amazing response to that. So yeah, so it's really exciting.
Right.
And hopefully beneficial of value for people. And yeah,
I really like it. So just to mention that actually we've David has put a link. So on the live Facebook comments, the first comment is a list of resources that we've collated between us to offer people little sort of signposts and places to go for support. And one of them is Jim's page for A Walk With Me, amongst other things. So if you're interested in either for yourself or someone you know who's struggling, just what resources are out there at the moment, have a look on the comments. And if you're watching on YouTube, it will be in the description, or on the podcast it will be on hopefully in the podcast description as well. So I'll try and put that information everywhere that this talk goes, so you can find out about these resources, because they're important right now. Okay, great. So I'm just going to check in with David and see if anything's happening live on the chat. David, if you can hear me, just checking in with you, seeing if anything's happening live. If not, we will move into some questions. Okay, I've not heard anything from David, so let's go with questions. Okay, nothing. Okay, no, I've heard from David, that's fine. Okay, so some questions. We'll carry on with you, Jim, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure.
So a question to you, you have touched on this already, but just if there's anything to add to it that you haven't already said. How are you connecting to and living resilience personally in these times?
Well, I think the first thing for me, because I've been through a very challenging 3-4 months personal level with various things, is just to each day just say, you know what, you're doing all right, you're doing okay. And just almost like give yourself a hug. And I think that's one of the hardest things we can actually do, because your mind goes straight into, oh, where am I, and this, and my money, and you know, and they're all very live for me at the moment. You know, where I am in my life, like why aren't I where I want to be, my impact on the world, and all these sort of struggles, my health, and you know, but actually I just stop and think, what am I grateful for? And you know, and trying and doing that every day, just connecting and being just appreciative of who you are and what you do bring to this world, and yeah, just being compassionate for yourself. I think that's the biggest one for me. And then the other things I've been doing are really, obviously walking and connecting to nature when I can, but breath has been a massive part of my journey over the last few years. In fact, 20 years. I mean, one of the ill health problems I had was viral problems, and it pretty much stopped me smiling, stopped me breathing, stopped me connecting. I withdrew from people, withdrew from friends, because of the shame of it and because of the pain of it. And I think that a lot of it affected my health, well, it did, and my breathing. And I think that breath at the moment is so important for our immune systems, for our whole bodies, for our mental health. And breathing properly, nasal breathing, but also having meditative exercises and breathing exercises every day. And I've found it transformative for me. You know, if only I'd been sort of shown or taught some of these 20 years ago, but I haven't been breathing properly because of a lot of the, I think, well, a number of reasons, without going into. Primarily, I had this viral problem in the nose for many, many years. It's probably only in the last 2 years, and that started in early 2000s. So I've actually felt I've overcome it. And I wouldn't say overcome, but I'm, you know, it's very rare now that it flares up. So yeah, so breathing is a big part of my sort of, yeah. And I think just on resilience, I think it's really going back to what I spoke about before, connecting to, as you said, online and offline circles and groups and family, and keeping doing that, because I think I have a tendency to withdraw, you know, and noticing when I'm withdrawing and say, you know what, this is exactly when I need to step in, or I need to pick up the phone, or I do need to share. And I'm forever in that kind of struggle of you know what, I'm just going to switch everything off and not talk to people. And I think that's, you know, really leaning in when you feel like that. That's resilience, I think.
Yeah, great. So I've just got a quick question to add then, because you might be able to inspire people a bit. When you're feeling like you're locking in and you feel reluctant, what helps you to kind of cross that bridge and reach out to someone?
Well, knowing every time I have reached out in the past, it's some way helped me. And knowing that we're all experiencing this, and we're all experiencing grief and sorrow and pain. And whilst it's acutely something that you're feeling, sometimes I just have to take myself out of it and go, it's everybody feeling this. So, like, you know, it kind of takes me out of my own experience, and I start to, you know, open up and say, this is like everybody, and how can I be a part of that? How can I be in that sharing of that? And so yeah, so I kind of bring myself out of myself for a bit and just look at it as in a different perspective, and that brings me down to sort of you know, we're all in this together, and we need to be sharing, and we need to be talking about this. But our default is to not, and our default is because of our society and culture. You know, a lot of indigenous cultures and cultures, you know, grief and sorrow is shared in the village. It's shared as a community. It's healthy. It's brought to the circle. It's brought to the community, and it's held, and you feel held. And I think that's the experience we need to bring in our communities going forward.
Yeah, great. It's I really resonate with the thing of, like, the more you do it, the more confidence you get in it. You know, like, it's hard when you start, isn't it? I think, but when you've done it a few times and you can see, actually, I feel better every time I've done it. It's been beneficial. Then it's like getting a wheel moving. I think that's my analogy for it. It's like, it's really hard to get that wheel moving in the beginning, but once it's moving, it has a emotion, and it's easier then to kind of to do it again, you know, once you've done it a few times and you know that it's helpful. So
one of my mentors once said, what has feelings got to do with it? And I was like, wow, yeah, okay, what have my feelings actually got to do with this? And it's kind of, that's the perspective I take on. What have my feelings got to do with this? And that can be negative and positive in a way, because I think you have to share your feelings. It's not, you know, but equally it's kind of like, yeah, okay, come on, let's do this. Let's open up.
Yeah, don't let them be a barrier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Jim. Great. So Chukes, yeah, what have you got anything different? I imagine you're having a different experience to Jim.
One of the things I think about all our journeys, and especially at this time, and I think you might get to the question more broadly about the opportunities that COVID has done. Now, before COVID, we wouldn't be sitting here doing what we're doing. We'd have been in our individual spaces doing what we're doing. And I love, there's certain themes there that Jim has been speaking to, which are universal, which I'm also going to share with you as well. Partly the sitting in circles. Yeah, that happens in every Aboriginal culture. It is the invasion from our culture into other cultures and calling us savages and many other things that's taken that out of us. So then we also talk about, beautifully as he expressed it there, about linking into nature and the broader concept, you know, that we are everything. And we are part of everything. And one of the things I've been doing recently is getting in touch with something called the Tree of Life practice, which is about basically, you know, looking at your tree and the bits of it, the fruits, what are the fruits, your connection to the roots and everything else. And it really works well in indigenous cultures. But when you get into the English culture, and I'm very English, by the way, so I know this one to be true, you almost like forget that you've got ancestors. You might know your grandma, your great-grandma, but you only know. And then there's that sense of almost like isolationist, which is how we have been as a nation. We're an island nation. We've gone over the world. We've created a commonwealth. Actually, we won't even call it that, but we have. And our natural reality, and this is something that I've learned at boarding school and many people, is this isolation. Research shows us that when you're feeling stressed, if you believe stress is going to kill you, it will kill you. But actually, when you're feeling stressed, it shows that you need to reach out. And then again, what Jim alluded to there were feelings, feelings can be like the wave that really affects you. And so by breathing, who made up that one? Breathing, gratitude, the simplicity, the self-compassion. These are the things we need to teach young people. I wasn't taught this. I'm having to learn this. So imagine we teach this so that everyone can learn to self-regulate. Everyone can stay a bit calm. And that for me is the way in which, if from a very early age we're bred into competition, we can't see anything. Does nature compete that we compete? I don't think so. So our natural state is really important. So we've also expanded through lockdown into bringing over a project called Circles in Schools project, where we're really working with people like Jim was saying there to sit in circles. We're also bringing over something called the natural helpers, where we're going to help children to become natural helpers, because they're already doing it anyway, but to sit in circle and with teachers. So we lose the hierarchy. That's the other thing about circle. You don't have a hierarchy. Like we're sitting in a circle now, even though we're on Zoom. Yeah, there's no hierarchy. There's a sense of fellowship. There's a sense of brotherhood and sisterhood. Yeah, whereas everything else is designed to have this going on and push it down. So when you mentioned NHS, it's not their fault, but they're based upon that system. But what's happening, things like open dialogue is coming to us, peer-to-peer support's coming. What we're doing is coming. And as we lose that tension between private and public, we have a much better holistic reality. So for me, the root of it is, are we separating ourselves, or are we bringing ourselves back home?
Great. So what are you doing on a daily basis, Chukes?
Oh my God.
Keep resilient. Well, no, not in terms of your work, but just in terms of...
Yeah. Well, firstly, is to not see it as work. The work is, for me, without being arrogant, is to be on, we're all saints. We're all angels. That's something we don't really know about. Yeah. We're angels having an earthly experience in a physical realm. Yeah. So what I'm having to do is listen to the teachings of Buddha, listen to the teachings of Jesus, and learn to unlearn what I've been told is true. We did not descend from apes, but that's what society says. America wasn't discovered in 1492. So what I'm doing is in my studies, unlearning what I call spells that have been put around me to make me feel less than as a Black person, or less than because I'm a man, or different because I'm Black, all these different things. So I do a lot of that. I try and do meditations. I at least I try and om for 20 minutes, which totally loses myself in that. Like Jim says, get out in nature. I've been a bit lazy recently, and I say lazy, that's naughty, I shouldn't call myself lazy, but I haven't made time to do that in the way I need to. Then I fast one day a week at least. But this week, for instance, I've now been fasting for 4 days. And what that's done, I'm a bit cuddly. So giving myself self-hugs helps, but it's like, what I'm trying to do there is purify myself with food. And recognizing as well, one of the big things around mental health and well-being is that we've got to see, and if we were from India, we'd see food as prasadam. So it's a blessing. Yeah, in a Native American tradition, the animal has laid down its body for us to eat or to clothe and everything. So everything's part of this great, big recycling plant. Yeah, so I'm starting to learn that everything is interconnected, and everything I try and do is to have that mindful awareness rather than how I was bred to be like the dominant person or the domination or the fastest, is like slowing down. And we've got a phrase, we don't say slowing down, call it slowing up. And what I mean by that is that when we get depressed, we depress down into our emotions, into our solar plexus. When we raise it up into our hearts. And so from our heart, only my heart, and that's the hardest work. They say the longest journey is from the head to the heart, is trying to, on a daily purpose or way, to check out, is this a heart response or is this a emotional response? Now, I'm not a saint, so I do have a lot of those wrong, what I call wrong emotions. And for me, even what in many cultures as well, we know that our emotions connect to the weather, you know, everything. So it's like just recognizing that. And the hardest thing I'm trying to do at present to do resilience is keeping calm and keeping that faith, because I'm no good to anyone if I'm losing the plot. The other day, someone rang me up. I got so excited. And he said to me, he replied to me today, said, "You did sound a bit manic. Are you okay?" And what it was my excitement, and I over bubbled, and it came across like I was having what in his mind was a manic episode. So it's so subtle, you know. I'm partly Jamaican, and when I go to Jamaica, I'm like, man, look at what they're doing here, and I'm getting all English on me. Yeah, I go to Nigeria, like Jim mentioned there, and when someone dies, the wailing that takes place. Here it's like, oh, don't see the dead body, put it away. You know, who, sir? Nothing. We don't know about death. Yeah, so for me, it's trying to see the world where I'm sitting here in Totnes, but the world is a wider reality. And so, yeah, that gives me my resilience to know that we are part of the whole. And as I take care of myself, the ripple effect also affects the world.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Chukes. So, Jim, I wonder if I can ask you now, wonder what community resilience is looking like in your local area. You know, how is your community, what's community resilience actually looking like where you live at the moment?
Well, I live quite remotely, actually. I would say, you know, from a village point of view, because I do live in a village, but sort of on the outskirts of the village, you know, people are supporting each other. There's the kind of WhatsApp groups and calls, and, you know, people are there to support other people if they need them, particularly the elderly. So I think that's important. And then, as you mentioned earlier on, there's online groups as well that I belong to. So I think, yeah, it's something I've been questioning myself. Like, you know, I'm isolated, and, you know, a lot of my work that I was doing before and a lot of the groups suddenly vanished. And I'm sort of asking myself, you know, where is my community? Who do I belong to? You know, and I think this is a lot of what we're asking ourselves. Where do we belong? You know, where is our communities? You know, and, you know, I'd say I'm very lucky and grateful. I've got lots of little communities, but they're very spread out. They're very spread out over, and I think some of the social media has done that. People we're connecting from various parts of the UK. So that sort of belonging to a land, belonging to a place, belonging to a community has become very much digitized. So I think for me, what's important, you know, and I do belong to some earth community, and I think community allotments, ecotherapy projects, which I work with, they have been so critical. I mean, you mentioned mine earlier on. They funded a lot of 150 projects for a number of years, and I think this is where we need to move towards, is that community growing nature therapy projects, that bringing people together in their communities, so you feel very much a part of that community, a part of the land, connected to the land, and that you belong. And in those spaces, you can share, you can feel, you can connect, you can become more aware, and you can feel that you're held. And you can have your hands in the soil, which is very therapeutic as well, and become more connected to the wider natural world and being. So I think it's a really interesting journey that I've been on in this last year, from feeling very connected to a lot of communities to suddenly feeling, where is that locally for me? You know, and I've got friends, but do I feel it? You know, I'm very connected to the land that I live near, and I'm very connected to trees that I've had sit spots with, and I'm very connected to the birds. But on a human community level, I don't have that circle where, you know, here. And that's something I want to create. I am creating it because I've created something called the Nature Sanctuary. And for me, that's going to be the place where I invite people locally to come and to do all of what I've just shared. So it would be ecotherapy, nature therapy, circles, conservation of the area. And just initially after we come out of this next lockdown, but it would be, I think, just a place of restoration, a place to be still initially. I mean, I honestly think that's all that's needed at the moment. Well, what will be needed is really just a place to come and be still and to just recover.
Yeah. Recover from, what would you say we're recovering from?
Well, I think we're going to be recovering from an individual and a community-wide and a collective grief and sorrow. And that covers grief, covers whole areas from our own grief, our physical loss of friends and family, the grief of not going back, not being able to go back to what we had before. You know, we're in deep change here. Like when we get ill personally, when I got ill personally, there was no going back to the way I was before. And this as a collective is what's happening to us. And it's sitting with those feelings. It's sitting with those, you know, on the one hand, it's loss and it's grief. On the other hand, it's a beautiful opportunity to recreate and reimagine a new world. But I think before we get to that, we need to just sit and be still. You need time to recover. Your system needs to recover, and being just still and at peace in nature, but being held by other people, if in a circle, I think is what's needed. And the other doing part of the nature sanctuary, or the, you know, will come in time, but it would just be a place to be and to restore.
Thank you. Thanks for speaking on that, Jim. I really appreciate it. Okay, Chukes, so yeah, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about in your locality where you are, Totnes and Devon, a very lively little community. What's community resilience looking like around you at the moment?
I'm going to start with a negative and move to a positive. So I think there is a lot of worry about what the future looks like, and I think what Jim said there is really important. What I love about what's been happening since the 3 lockdowns is that I've been involved in many of these Zooms and Facebook. This is my first Facebook Live actually, but many Zooms. So I'm a Facebook Live virgin. So what I've loved, we seem to be picking up on universal themes. I'm having this discussion, what Jim's creating, we're creating Wellness in the Woods, we've got that going on. I'm hoping to buy a farm where we're going to do the same things Jim's been talking about for people who've been bereaved by suicide or suicide. There are so many people gathering who've been landscape gardeners who want to work with mental health. It's like we're being overshadowed with this deep understanding of how to be healed on a collective consciousness rather than just on an individual consciousness. And so for some people, what's happening is they're being pulled out of themselves to be me included, not being so individual, to sit in group. And so we managed again through the lottery to get this Wellness in the Woods project in town, in the North Woods in Dartington. So a lot of people are doing that. We're working with different age groups. I'm now part in the NHS in a social prescribing team. So I get the best of both worlds. I get people and I'm trying to bring them into a group to socially prescribe things like, we've got a forest bathing project starting soon, Jim, on 10th of March, 6-week forest bathing, and we're going to take that to the forest bathing conference, which is in Japan, Sodiska, next year. And we're going to get more and more evidence because there is so much evidence. So taking what we know, so green gym, blue gyms, everything. So in Totnes, that's all going on. However, there's still that subtlety of bringing things together. So we get out of our silo working, because what we're also going to be needing to do is reinvent a way of allowing the flow, not only of love and everything else, but money and support. So we've got to get out of that way of concept that there is not enough money. We are the richest we've ever been in human reality. It's just how it's shared. So the concept of how we do that, how we share and care. So I think in Totnes, there are lots of ideas around that. We're also getting involved with thinking about tiny houses, because the price of houses here are off the scale. How can I focus on people's and it's not off the scale compared with where I talked about acne earlier, but it's like how do we support people to live? Yeah. So if we can't do the basic needs of food as well, organic food and food cooked that you've actually put in the ground and watched, massive blessing, massive healing. So localized in every community becomes the world. And just what I'm also recognizing, still coming back to that sense of feeling, there's one thing feeling alone and lonely and isolated, and another thing feeling being on your own but interconnected. So the other phrase that I'm trying to bring back, we want to get rid of the BAME and black and all of that, and we want to bring in this energy of Ubuntu. And Ubuntu speaks to an African tradition, which means I am because we are. I can't be fully human unless I'm doing it in relationship to everything else. So that's the sort of thing. We have young people's groups meeting. We have but I did say about the young people's groups, we're pretty adult here. so that's why, again, we want to do the sort of young people's groups and everything else. So the doctor surgeries, people are getting involved, schools are getting involved. St. John's rang us the other day saying they want to make an allotment growing field there because they've got the school, they've got polytunnels. Can we keep it open 6 weeks? So for me, I'm watching, again, that's the other thing. If we can witness, we can see this form of blended learning taking place. Let's do a little bit online. Let's do some in nature. But let us not play rugby and sports and all that stuff, which is I played a lot about. Let's do all that work. And that's what I feel that the direction of travel could be and will be. Because the young people who are a bit older really want to get involved in that sort of stuff. So I'm seeing a bit of that, and I'm loving the embryonic. And one phrase I've been using recently is that we are constant gardeners, even that's a film, but it's not really about the film. i.e. we're planting seeds, growing seeds. Some things are dying, some things are being pruned, some things, and if we understand that, and we're also doing that within ourselves, because to me, the earth is a temple, our bodies are a temple, everything's about a temple, so we've got to look after the temple.
Thanks, Chukes. I like that. There's a couple of things that, like, some threads I'm kind of picking up at this point. One is around young people, because I know Chukes, you work with young people, and I know you've touched on the circles as well, Jim. You had some teenagers or some young people in your group. So that's one thing I'm thinking about, our teenagers who are, from what I'm seeing, really struggling with the pandemic and the shifts of what's happening at this time. You know, it's generally your teenage years is a year to get out there, and exactly at this point, that's what they can't do. So I think I'm definitely seeing a struggle for our teenagers and for our kids, which I think is a part of a bigger struggle that's going on. And someone, I can't remember which one of you mentioned around it, not having a voice, Chukes, I think you said about that in our society. So it's one of the things I'm just sitting with as we're talking. The other ones I'm just wondering about is if we could maybe offer some practical tips for people in, like, you know, I guess the two things we're speaking to that we touched on at the beginning is, you know, reconnecting with nature, or the way I would language it is either rebuilding or developing a relationship with nature, because it is, to me, it's a relationship. I am a being, the planet is a being, and it's a relationship. You know, I'm not on the planet, I am part of the planet. And so it's a healing journey, actually, in my experience, which I think can include, as we've touched on, grief, you know, grief at what's been lost, grief at the separation we've been living with the world around us. So maybe let's just touch on that first. So is there if people are listening to this and they really don't feel the relation, you know, what we're talking about is having this, you know, very felt relationship with the world around us and with nature, what might be steps that people could take to coming back into a relationship with nature? If we start from a place of real disconnection. Jim, I feel like you might be good to start on this one.
Well, what came up for me just then was, you know, reconnecting to our old ways and reconnecting to, you know, ritual and to song and to language and poetry, and to dance and to movement. And I think, you know, young people connect with all of that. You know, how can we create spaces for them to share that and to be part of that? And I think that's what we've lost. you know, so I think that's really important for us. So but embodying that yourself and going out and just being in nature and doing all of those, singing, you know, dancing, moving, just breathing, touching. I mean, one of the practices I do with forest bathing, which is really simple, which is just the 5 senses. So you just 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So as you will go for your walk, you choose 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can touch, 2 things that you can smell, and 1 thing that you can taste. And that can take half an hour. It could take, you know, if you really walk slowly, an hour, and really tune into those senses, those 5 senses. And it's incredibly mindful, because, you know, you're coming out of your head and you're really listening to the whole audio soundscape around you that's near and what's far. But you're also tuning into those other senses that are less dominant, like your sight, which is your most dominant sense. And you're tuning into, how does it taste this morning? What does the air taste like? What is the flavor I'm getting at the moment? And what am I smelling? And I think, yeah, that's a simple practice. It brings you into the body and it connects you to nature. And the other practice that I think is really strong is a sit spot, where, you know, you find a place that and it could be a bench on a park, it could be by a tree in a park, it can be, you know, on the edge of a woodland. A lot of the forest bathing I'm doing now is in more accessible urban woodlands, as opposed to these more remote and National Trust places. And I think that's absolutely vital going forward, that we're working on those liminal spaces of urban areas where there is nature. But there's always somewhere, even on a balcony, you can connect to the birds or the sky or the clouds moving. And I think all of those are mindful ways of connecting. Natural mindfulness is what I call it. And it's ways of connecting to nature more mindfully. And a sit spot is really finding a place that you can get to know, as if it was your mother, your father, your brother, your sister, your best friend. And you start to have that communication relationship with it, and you go there fairly regularly or every day if you can. But you know, and build a relationship. Notice what's changing with it. Notice how you're feeling, how you're changing, and how it feels in the body. And really just build that relationship and notice how it's changing and what animals and the light that comes through it, and just really get to know it. And it becomes a place of sort of comfort and security. It feels like your grandma would feel when you go around and she looks after you. It's that kind of relationship you're building with nature, and I think that's incredibly powerful. And one way you can express your feelings. So for young people, I would encourage them to do that.
Great, thanks, Jim. I think one I really like is one I touched on in the beginning, which is I like to go and press my belly into a tree, because it's for me, I really need to kind of feel that sort of belly connection. I had a friend years ago who she was not English, really challenged the English hug like this, kind of like just to kind of really sort of just about touch the top of your body, but she was like, no, get your belly in, you know. She'd be very insistent on getting your belly into the hug. And I think it comes from that, because I think there is something we're afraid of to connect around, you know, belly level. So inspired by that, I started going to trees, and I would just really press my belly into a tree and just breathe with the tree. And I go into a very, like you just said, it's like sitting with my loving grandmother or something. That's the feeling I get when I do that. And I did that the other day. Literally, I was there for half an hour, and I've got to the point where when people see me, I don't care as much. I think I used to be much more self-conscious about people seeing me do that. But I'm noticing I care less and less. But I'm a really big fan of just going resting and breathing with a tree for a minute. I find it's really simple, and I can't always feel it, but I know on some level that there is a connection when I do that, and that's enough sometimes. So yeah, it's one of my little tips. Chukes, any tips from you about how to build a bridge to connecting with the natural world if it's something we're not experiencing?
I think, I mean, one of the things since I moved to Devon, I feel very privileged to be in Devon. And I think back to my days in Hackney, which wasn't like that. At the same time, now when I go back to Hackney, it's filled with nature. So you can tune in. I think for me, the biggest thing was something that Jim said earlier, which is breathing, because without it, we are not really in our bodies. You know, we are sort of in our heads. We're shallow breathing. We're not really present. So breathing and silence, but silence in the mind. So in Buddhism, that would be emptiness, but in that, you start to feel that nature flowing through you and that connection that Jim talked about earlier. So, you know, I spend a lot of time in where I'm speaking to you from now, and I just look across there into our eucalyptus woods, and I'm hit by them. I'm not walking there. When I walk in there, it's off the scale again. But what I'm saying is, it's that mind that can connect at any time. You can only do any of what we're talking about if you're relaxed. No healing can take place if you're not relaxed. No learning can take place if you're not relaxed. So I think, and we're not used to relaxing. If you ask people, what is the opposite to stress? Most people don't know the answer. Do you know what the answer is? What is it?
The opposite to stress?
Yeah.
You just said it, didn't you?
Well, that's part of it, but there is actually 2 words that we normally, rest and digest. Rest and digest. And most people don't know. Yes, because you've got to see it as it is, you know. And then sometimes some of our suffering is we want to see it as something else. The grass is always greener or something. And I think for young people, my big thing, and again, I've mentioned it a couple of times, is they've reincarnated. They've reincarnated into a world that's not like quite what they think it is. And for me, if someone had told me that when I was 5 years old, and I thought when I was here, like, why am I here in the middle of Hackney? Whereas I thought I should be somewhere else. I literally did think that. And so my parents thought, oh, you need to go off and become a lawyer, or you need to go and do this because you're talking this way. How I'm talking now is very similar to how I talked when I was 5 years old. Now, that was a trip. So I think we need to really see that in young people. I love that bit in Buddhism where they say everyone you meet has been in one of your relations somewhere. Actually, they do actually say that everyone you meet has been your mother, which is quite hard for some people. So when they first brought that over to the West, most people say, I don't even like my mother, or my mother doesn't like me. So they've gone, well, think about a little bird with a broken wing. And because we love pets more sometimes than people, and they get that. But it is that reality, really understanding that. We're not taught that in schools. So I think what we need, again, growing up, out of Britain sometimes, they say, when you come to England, do not talk about 3 things. I mean, I think we all know what they are. Sex, religion, and politics. In every culture, that's what we need more, but not the oppositional, I'm a Labour Party, I'm this, I'm that. That's just tribal warfare. But to really understand about politics, to really understand about religion in its true sense, what Jim was talking about, the sacredness in all of life, the rituals of the sacredness. But it's not a religion the way that the power brokers have made it, which take us away from that. That's why the Aboriginal cultures, you might have the medicine man or whatever, but you don't have the hierarchy of people dressing up with a dog collar and everything else. Yeah. So it's about the sacredness of that, the politics, and the big one, of course, is sex. But not sex because you just need it, but everything is about sex. Good sex creates life, bad sex creates death. So it's about that general education and sharing with young people so that we all come to a sense of equality rather than inequality.
Mm. And so maybe it's about people like us creating spaces for those conversations, right? Because it's a big issue, and it's not something we can, like a lot of the big issues we're facing, it's not something we can magically change overnight, but there's seeds we can plant by having these conversations, by the 3 of us doing what we do in our communities, and that, something begins to ripple out in the world, doesn't it? So yes, may there be more spaces for our young people to be heard and seen in their true nature. Okay, great. So just checking in with my questions, but I'm feeling like there's more important questions to be asking actually. Maybe thinking about this slowing down. So I was talking to a friend earlier about societal trauma, a colleague actually. And something I've really noticed in my life experience is a dropping from a certain pace of working and doing life and moving into a slower pace with the pandemic and with lockdown. And that I've really noticed on a body sensing level that my rhythm has slowed down. And I think that's been a real gift of this time. Now, I know that not everybody has that opportunity, and that's what my colleague said to me is, what about the people that are working on the front line in the NHS who are the opposite of that, while part of the country are getting to stay at home and can embrace the opportunity to slow down? Wonderful. But what about the people that can't? What about the people that actually their pace has had to go, even further ahead? So somehow within this, I'm wanting to sort of speak to both ends of that spectrum. And I was thinking about the people that are fast paced, and I said, what I said to my friend and colleague is that, well, we can still learn to take a breath somewhere, and she said yes, so I do keep thinking about frontline workers with a lot of these conversations we've had. There's somehow some of what we're talking to is an ideal scenario, someone in my situation or your situation, Jim, in a way we have a lot of opportunities open to us right now that other people don't. Being on your own, there's I have more time to connect with nature, I have more time to consciously slow down. That's a real gift in a way. What can we speak to for someone who's a single parent or a parent with a big full family at home and they're a frontline worker? How can we speak to them in a way to support them to kind of embrace the collective field of invitation to slow down? Because I do feel there's a collective invitation to slow down. What little bits maybe could we what seeds could we plant for those people that maybe aren't in those kind of situations? Jim, do you want to?
Well, I mean, it's good to connect there with that. What came up for me was, with a busy family and a lot going on, as you said, there's always a space to be silent or to breathe. I think there's always time, you're always eating, and that's a sacred time to spend together as a family or with your kids. And I know that's not always easy to spend it around the table together. But when you do get that moment, is to maybe just pause and just appreciate the food that you have on the table, appreciate where the food came from. And maybe we don't even know, and that's another journey, another story, where the food's actually come from, which is, another story. But it's something that I think we can connect to, and it can be a few moments of just pausing and taking a breath and appreciating and being grateful. And I think that, as you said, there's always those moments of crossing a threshold, crossing the door as you leave the house. Like, how many times do you actually just stop for a second and just say, what can you hear? What else are you noticing? And it can be 5-10 seconds, but it's just a regulation. You can literally very quickly drop into a less rushed state. So I think it's just being mindful of those moments during the day. And really noticing those moments where you can be slightly more still and where you can connect to what matters and what is important. And I think instilling that, living that yourself will inspire your kids and inspire the rest of your family to do the same. And even though they might not do it, they will be absorbing it and taking it in.
Yeah, that's great. I really agree with that. I think it's not realistic to sort of say you can radically slow down the pace of your life in that kind of situation. But again, it's about planting seeds, isn't it? It's like, what can I do, rather than making a grand, I can't do anything. What can I do? I can take a moment to just look around when I step outside my house. I can take a moment to acknowledge the food I'm eating. Just little bits. They plant seeds, don't they? They start ripple of something in our lives. And thank you. I appreciate what you said there. Thanks,
And also just opening up the conversation about how are you feeling. And I think that's a really important conversation to try and have, is, you know, to really feel into the senses, feel into how you're feeling in your body. And that being able to share that with your kids, having a moment, oh, I'm feeling that here, or I'm feeling it on my cheek, or just really connects them to that sort of felt sense.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Chukes, anything to add to that? Any sort of tips on slowing down, kind of coming into more regulation?
I think, again, it's not something that's really being taught. You go to medical school, you go to ambulance service, you go to nursing. They don't really talk about that. So again, this has given us an opportunity to see that degree of pace for people. So before we got to the pandemic, we used to go into hospitals and do compassion circles where people sat for an hour talking about ways that they were self-compassionate to themselves. Now, when we first tried to do it, people got really angry and said, are you saying that we're not compassionate? And so if we really get self-compassion, which means that we do end up being able to slow down and do different things. And as I said, that's why we chose the phrase slow up, is that we realize that you can't pour from an empty cup and you can't do things unless you get your oxygen. So what we're all going to help each other do, because it is a collective reality. I feel especially like now that we are lucky to have these spaces, but we're like plowing the fields ready, like as Jim said, when people come out, that people are going to need places. And as they reconnect and come back to the reality as to why some people chose to go into nursing or paramedics, and we come out way and we detach from the system, which is very much creating some of our ill health. We start to, all of us, teachers, everyone, because we cannot go back to the thing that helped create the virus. Yeah, where the virus is showing us we got to stop and we got to reset, like you said, rekindle. And for me, again, keep coming back, we have to understand the connection to our spirit, because without that, we will always be at dis-ease and disconnected. Nature gives us that. So that, and then as each of us heal our own individuality, we can then relate properly to all the different kingdoms, and rather than possess the different kingdoms of nature, animal, vegetable, mineral, we start to come into right relationship to everything. And so it's having that awareness, but you can't do that if you're like I have been, like I think all of us. So we know what it's been like. So all we can do is model that and then share back, because I can't make my friends in the ambulance service feel guilty for working 12-hour shifts 4 days a week, which knackers you out and shortens your lifespan. But I did that for 4 years. It's hard. It takes 10 years of your life. So we have to have deep compassion and know that we are, what we do in our individual life does have an effect on the whole. So that's really important.
Yeah, really good point. And I think, you know, I am in the situation I'm in very currently, but I was not very long ago working in a secure unit at a very different pace. And I think what you just said there just, yeah, reminds me that actually that's what I was encouraging in our team is self-care. It's like, okay, we have to deal with this and at a certain pace sometimes, which is not helpful or healthy for us. But then that means we need to bed more into looking after each other and looking after ourselves outside of those moments. And modeling it for people we work with as well. So yeah, just reminding me of that. So thanks, Chukes. It's, I think, yeah, so I mean, self-care I think is important no matter what, but definitely if you're dealing with a high stressful job and you're in a really high pressure situation now, any moment you can take for self-care, take it. Take it. Go, Chukes.
I think one thing we must really acknowledge, that most of us have grown up in a generation that self-care has been likened to selfishness. It's not. So, you know, guilty service isn't service. You know, obligatory service isn't service. It's really hard to, I don't believe in boundaries, but to be able to do self-care to then enable you to respond to others is really needed. Because, you know, we talk a lot now in the NHS about the drama triangle. You know, so when we get caught in that drama triangle, rescue, persecutor, victim, that's not helping anybody. So, you know, I'm so aware of what's going on for teachers now, for doctors, for nurses. And I'm with Jim and many other people. I think we're preparing the balm. Yeah. So people can come and go, it's okay. Yeah. Everyone's a hero. Everyone's an angel. We're all in this together.
Lovely. What lovely words. Thank you. So, gents, we're nearly in the end of our conversation already. It's gone so quickly. It's gone super quickly. I think that's always a good sign when it's gone quickly. So let's close on it. If we can just briefly speak to this last question, which is, what do you see personally, if we just pinpoint one thing that's really standing out to you at the moment? What's one thing that you feel is a challenge that we're facing right now? One thing that's really standing out to you? And what are you feeling personally as a response to that? Jim, do you want to go first?
Sure. Thanks, Catherine. Yeah, what's come up for me is the practice and the journey that I was introduced to, which was Vision Quest and Nature Quest, which is like an indigenous rites of passage. The stages of that are basically separation, crossing a threshold, and then reintegration of your identity, of who you are as a person, and really noticing the gifts that you have. And for me, I'm feeling collectively, and I mean literally as a whole, all of us are going through that sort of initiation, that sort of that quest, that rites of passage, and that we are separating from the way that it was and our old identity, and that we've crossed a threshold and that we can't go back. And there's a lot of loss on not going back. There's a lot of grief on not going back. But you know, we're meant to come out of this experience, all of us deeply moved and changed, and then look and explore all together, and support each other together in circles to how we can reintegrate and how we can reimagine a new world, how we can reimagine a better way of coming together and a better way of supporting each other in relationship as nature. Everywhere there are these grassroots projects and people doing incredible work all across the world. And it's how we can continue that, but bring that together, bring us all together, because I think there's power in that. I was thinking what Chukes was saying about the different forest therapy projects and social prescription. And it is so fragmented. It is so, everybody's trying to do their bit and trying to get funding but yet, you know, we know it has intrinsic value on our health and well-being of our current generation and for all the future generations, and it brings a deeper connection to nature. And if we love something and we can feel connected to it, we have a desire to support it and not to continue this destruction of it. And so I think that there's this whole sort of journey that we're on, and it feels like an initiation, and we need to let go of, and it's hard to do it, that grief, that loss, and really just sit with at the moment that I don't know, because we haven't got to that stage yet. I just don't know what's happening, and it's okay to not feel what's happening. And the problem is, in that silence, when you spend it in the wild alone, you get these feelings of, I don't know whether I can deal with that emotion. And that is the emotion that we're scared of, and that we will distract ourselves, or we will numb ourselves, or it will bring so much fear. And I think collectively we need to just be able to sit with that not knowing.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jim. I have such a heart resonance with what you've just said. Thank you so much. Chukes, briefly, anything to add to that? Anything you're particularly with as a response?
If you just go with the practice of not knowing, what else can I say? However, I want to say what's going on for us all, and he said it so well, but in the teachings of Buddha and Jesus, reincarnation of Jesus now, we're moving from the tree of knowledge into the tree of wisdom. Two different trees, and we can't, the difficulty is leaving all of what we think we know into not knowing and recognizing there is a plan. It's geometrically in everything. Geomancy, sacred geomancy flows through all of life. And so in that, resting in trust without worry and stress. If we worry, that just creates the ripple of another virus. It's just a different virus, but one that we've never really been aware of. So by everything we've talked about, that can heal things. And that's where miracles, and there is a science behind miracles, will take place.
Great. Thank you. Jens, it's been great. Thank you so much. I can't believe how quickly this conversation's gone. It's gone super quick, like really quick this week. But yeah, my heart feels rich from the conversation. Thank you so much. And I really hope that this will go to people that it's useful to. So thank you. So just to finish up, just by saying next week we are talking to 3 really interesting people on intentional communities. So there's been a real movement towards intentional communities since the pandemic has started. So we've got 3 different people who are living in intentional communities. One of them who's been in intentional communities for over 20 years. Another one who's in a kibbutz in Israel and has been there for a few years. And so we've got some diverse perspectives on intentional community, and hopefully they're going to offer some insights into why they feel intentional community is becoming really important. So really looking forward to that conversation next week. The following week after that, we're talking on food resilience, which I know, Jim, when we talked, we were I'm really excited about food resilience because I think our food supply is in threat and we need to start facing that. That's my feeling. So we've got 3 really inspiring speakers. I've been really enjoying talking to them this week, who are going to be speaking to the topic of reimagining food the following week. So we've got some really interesting conversations coming up. If you're on Facebook, do like the page, Community Resilience Live Talks. If you like the page, then you'll get live updates of our conversations and what we're up to. On YouTube, we are also Community Resilience Live Talks on there. And we're also sharing this via podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, and 12 other platforms, which I'm
wow.
so it's getting out there every week, and I've noticed it every week. There's more and more of an audience. I think we had about 300 people listen to last week's one in total. So I'm sure these conversations are getting out there, and I'm getting lots of amazing response from people who are really touched by these dialogues. So thank you so much for bringing your heart and your presence to this conversation, and wishing you both well with your ongoing work and everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Lots of love.
Lots of love.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye, Jim.
Cool.